Kanu. To Right Honorable Keir Starmer, MP, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, number 10 Downing Street, London.
This story closely, and today we're talking about the ongoing situation surrounding Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of IPOB, and the protests that have been taking place. Now, the main headline that has been circulating is about IPOB supporters storming the British Consulate in the UK to demand the release of Nnamdi Kanu ahead of his final judgment on November 20th, 2025. This story has been developing for years now, and it's one that has a lot of people watching because of the stakes involved. Nnamdi Kanu, as you know, has been at the center of a legal battle that has not only drawn attention in Nigeria, but also internationally. He's been detained under some very serious charges, and it's caused a lot of tension between Nigeria and the UK, especially since Kanu holds British citizenship. So let's break this down. What's going on with Kanu? Well, he's been accused of terrorism and treason, primarily due to his leadership of the indigenous people of Biafra, or IPOB. IPOB is a group pushing for the independence of Biafra, a region in Nigeria that has a complex history, especially after the Nigerian Civil War. Kanu's activism has made him a prominent figure in this movement, and he has a large following, both in Nigeria and in the UK, where he has some strong support from the Nigerian diaspora. Now, over the years, Kanu has faced several court cases, and it has not been smooth sailing. He was first arrested back in 2015, but after being granted bail, he disappeared in 2017. He resurfaced in 2021, having been arrested in Kenya, and was extradited back to Nigeria under what some say were questionable circumstances, raising concerns about his rights. The UK, his home country, has been under pressure to intervene and secure his release since he's a British citizen. The tension surrounding his case has only increased with time, especially considering the nature of the charges against him and the way the legal process has unfolded. Now, what about this protest? We know that IPOB supporters in the UK have been very active in trying to rally support for Kanu. The latest development has been a protest that reportedly involved a significant number of people storming the British Consulate. They were demanding the release of Kanu before his final judgment, which is set for November 20th, 2025. While the exact details of the protest are still being confirmed, it's clear that this issue is causing a lot of uproar. The protest was seen as a major move by IPOB supporters to put pressure on both the Nigerian and British governments. The protesters, many of whom are based in the UK, are demanding that the British government do more to ensure Kanu's release, citing his rights as a British citizen. There's a lot at stake here because not only is it a case of personal freedom for Kanu, but it's also a broader issue about the rights of diaspora communities and how the UK handles issues involving its citizens abroad, especially when it comes to foreign legal systems that may not be seen as fair or just. The judgment that is scheduled for November 20th could be a turning point. If Kanu is released, or if there is a favorable outcome for him, it could be seen as a victory for IPOB and its supporters. However, if the court rules against him, it could lead to increased unrest, not just in Nigeria, but also within the diaspora. The final judgment will likely have a ripple effect on the IPOB movement, and depending on the outcome, we could see further protests or even acts of civil disobedience. It's clear that IPOB is not going to back down easily, and they are willing to take this fight as far as it needs to go. But beyond the protests, what does all this mean for Nigeria and the UK? For Nigeria, this case has become a flashpoint for a number of different issues: political autonomy, human rights, the balance of power between different regions, and the role of the state in managing separatist movements. For the UK, the case has raised questions about its responsibilities to its citizens abroad, especially in situations where there are allegations of human rights abuses. If Kanu's case is seen as a violation of his rights, it could put the UK in a difficult position. How far is the UK willing to go to protect one of its citizens, especially when it involves the diplomatic complexities of dealing with another country's legal system? We've also seen that the protests are not just about Kanu's case. They're part of a larger movement about the Biafran struggle and the desire for self-determination. While IPOB is at the forefront, there are many others who see Kanu as a symbol of the fight for justice and independence. This is why the protests have been so powerful. They're not just about one man, they're about a cause that a lot of people feel strongly about, and that cause has gained more momentum in recent years, particularly among Nigerians living abroad. This issue is not just affecting the UK and Nigeria, it's also drawing attention from international human rights organizations who are calling for a fair trial and for Kanu's rights to be respected. The protests, especially the one targeting the British Consulate, are a clear sign that people are not going to stop fighting for what they believe in. And they want the world to see it. They want the world to understand that this is not just about a court case, but about a larger struggle for justice and fairness. Now, let's take a moment to think about what could happen next. The date for Kanu's final judgment is fast approaching, and there's no doubt that this will be a critical moment for both IPOB and the Nigerian government. If the judgment doesn't go the way IPOB supporters want, we could see more protests, more unrest, and possibly even calls for more extreme actions. On the other hand, if Kanu is released or if the charges are dropped, it could be a huge win for the IPOB movement and could lead to a major shift in the political landscape in Nigeria. But beyond the immediate aftermath, there are some deeper questions that need to be asked. For instance, how far is the international community willing to go to support Kanu and IPOB? Will the UK take more decisive action, or will it continue to play a waiting game? What will this case mean for future movements for self-determination in Africa? These are questions that won't be answered easily, and they will continue to shape the conversation long after the final judgment is delivered. So, as we've seen, the upcoming judgment on Nnamdi Kanu is a massive event that will not only shape the future of IPOB, but could also affect Nigeria's political landscape and the diplomatic relationship between the UK and Nigeria. The protests by IPOB supporters in the UK have sent a strong message that the movement is not backing down and is willing to take its fight to the very doors of the British government. One thing that's important to note here is the growing role of the Nigerian diaspora in influencing events back home. Over the past decade, we've seen the diaspora become increasingly vocal and active in pushing for change in Nigeria. The protests outside the British Consulate aren't just about Nnamdi Kanu. They symbolize a broader movement of people demanding to be heard, both by the Nigerian government and by the international community. Many in the diaspora feel a deep connection to the struggles back home, and when someone like Kanu, who has become a symbol of resistance, is involved, they are ready to mobilize. The impact of these protests goes beyond the immediate attention they draw to Kanu's case. They also shed light on how the Nigerian government is handling dissent, particularly when it comes to movements that challenge the status quo, the way the government responds to these protests, and how the legal system handles Kanu's case will send a signal to other movements for self-determination within Nigeria and across Africa. If Kanu is sentenced harshly, or if his rights are not upheld, it could embolden other separatist groups or civil rights movements that feel the state is not protecting their interests. In terms of international attention, and the UK is in a difficult position. On one hand, they have a responsibility to protect the rights of their citizens, including those abroad. On the other hand, they also have to balance their diplomatic relationship with Nigeria, a crucial partner in Africa. The UK government has faced criticism for not doing enough to secure Kanu's release, and this protest is a direct response to that perceived lack of action. While the British government has stated that they are following the situation closely, many feel that they could do more, especially when it comes to ensuring fair treatment for Kanu. But the UK is not the only international player in this. The United Nations and human rights organizations have also been monitoring the situation, and some have called for Nigeria to respect Kanu's rights and ensure a fair trial. This international pressure could have a significant influence on how the Nigerian government handles the case moving forward. If there's a backlash, especially from Western governments or international bodies, Nigeria could find itself under increased scrutiny, which could complicate its diplomatic relations with countries that have a strong interest in human rights. Now let's take a step back and look at the broader implications of this case. What does this all mean for Nigeria as a nation? The Kanu case is a reflection of the deep divisions within the country. While Kanu has supporters who view him as a freedom fighter and a voice for the marginalized, there are also many who see him as a threat to national unity. His calls for Biafra's independence tap into long-standing grievances about inequality, corruption, and the lack of political representation for the Igbo people who are at the heart of the IPOB movement. The Nigerian government has consistently argued that IPOB's activities threaten the stability of the country, and they've taken a hardline approach in dealing with the group. But the question remains, how much longer can the government suppress these calls for self-determination? The Kanu case has sparked a wider conversation about Nigeria's future and the need for reform. If the government continues to dismiss or suppress these movements, it risks further alienating large segments of the population, especially in the southeast, where IPOB has its strongest base. On the other hand, if the government were to show more openness to dialogue and address some of the root causes of discontent in the region, it could go a long way in easing tensions. This could involve taking a closer look at Nigeria's federal structure, ensuring more equitable distribution of resources, and giving marginalized regions more political power. Until these issues are addressed, however, it's likely that we'll continue to see movements like IPOB gaining traction and finding ways to make their voices heard. This brings us back to the protests and the November 20th judgment. The protests we're seeing are not just a one-off event. They are part of a larger strategy by IPOB to keep the issue in the public eye and to apply pressure on both the Nigerian and British governments. The fact that they are targeting the British Consulate shows how much they are relying on international support to get their message across. They know that if the international community starts to pay more attention, it could force both governments to reconsider their positions. As for the judgment itself, we're all waiting to see how the court will rule. If the verdict is not in Kanu's favor, expect more protests, more unrest, and potentially even violent confrontations. The stakes are high for Kanu and his supporters, and they are prepared to take things to the streets if necessary. If the judgment is more lenient, it could provide a temporary respite, but the larger issue of Biafra's independence will not go away. It will continue to simmer in the background until there's a real and meaningful dialogue between the government and those pushing for greater autonomy. In the coming weeks, we can expect even more attention on this case, especially as the judgment date gets closer. The UK's response will be closely watched, as will the reactions from other international bodies. The Nigerian government too will be under intense pressure to ensure that the process is fair and transparent. As we've seen, the world is watching, and how Nigeria handles this situation could set a precedent for how it deals with similar movements in the future. So, as we wait for November 20th, the only thing we know for certain is that the tension will continue to build. Whether Kanu is released or sentenced, there will be consequences, and we're all going to be watching closely to see what happens next. This is a pivotal moment for Nigeria, the UK, and the people of Biafra, and it's a story that will continue to unfold in the coming days and weeks. As we wrap up this topic, I want to encourage you to stay tuned because this story is far from over. Whether you agree or disagree with the actions of IPOB or Kanu, this is a situation that's going to have long-lasting implications for Nigerian politics, UK diplomacy, and international human rights law. As the date for the final judgment draws nearer, expect more updates, more protests, and more public outcry. Now, before I end this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you found this video interesting and want more updates on this story and other major events, make sure to stay connected. And please leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about the protests, Kanu's case, and what might happen next. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe.